thank you all for being here. We're grateful to our partners, the League of Women Voters of San Francisco, for their collaboration and leadership in making this forum possible. Oh, thank you. And thank you to the candidates for joining us tonight. And for your willingness to engage with those gathered here tonight directly. We appreciate your time and your commitment to public service. At UCSF, our mission is grounded in advancing health through education, research, and patient care. That work is closely connected with the broader civic and policy environment and to the people that we serve. We're grateful for the partnership that UCSF and the University of California more broadly has with our federal representatives to expand access to higher education, advance academic research and discovery, and sustain the healthcare systems that serve people throughout California. Decisions made at the federal level shape this work in very real ways. They affect our patients, our students, our faculty, and people here in San Francisco and beyond. That is part of why we're here tonight. As a public institution, we believe at UCSF that we have a responsibility to serve as a trusted civic partner and as a place where informed, respectful dialogue can take place. More simply, to be a place where these conversations can happen and where people can come together around issues that matter. Hosting this forum at UCSF reflects this commitment. It brings candidates and voters together and supports an informed electorate. Serving in Congress is, of course, about national leadership, but it's also about representing and delivering for the people in your district. Staying grounded in that responsibility matters. This forum is an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates and how they approach that work. It's an opportunity for all of us to engage, to listen, to ask questions, to stay connected to the civic process. Thank you again to everyone for being here, and now it is my privilege to introduce Reverend Sadie Stone, representing our co-host this evening, Jones Memorial United Methodist Church. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Sadie Stone, and I have the honor and privilege as serving as pastor at Jones Memorial United Methodist Church, one of San Francisco's historic African-American congregations rooted in the Fillmore neighborhood for generations. We are proud to help bring this forum to the community, and we are grateful for everyone who helped make it happen, especially the League of Women Voters, whose dedication to civic life in this city is unmatched. To the candidates, we thank you for showing up because we know how much that matters. The Fillmore, where our church is located, has a story. It was once known as the Harlem of the West, a thriving center of Black culture, music, and community, and it also knows and understands what it means when the government gets it wrong. Gentrification, displacement, and disinvestment, our congregation has been here through it all. So when we talk about who represents San Francisco, it is not abstract for our community and the neighborhood around us. Federal decisions land at our doorsteps. They show up in our members' lives, and whether they can afford to stay here in this city of San Francisco, whether they have access to health care or believe that their government even sees them. The community at Jones has never had the luxury of separating faith from civic life. Showing up for our community, advocating, bearing witness, and making sure people are counted and seen, that is part of what we are called to do. That is why Jones Memorial is here tonight. We hope this evening gives each of you what you need to make an informed decision and remind us all that democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Ruth Grace Wong, co-president of the League of Women Voters of San Francisco. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political nonprofit encouraging informed and active government participation. The League never campaigns for or against candidates or political parties. However, after thorough study, we often take a stand on important issues in the community. The League is committed to providing the resources that voters need to exercise the most fundamental right of our democracy, voting. Please visit lwvsf.org/vote in the coming weeks, and you will find many voter resources. We want to thank UCSF for the use of this facility and our other co-sponsors, Jones Memorial United Methodist Church, the ACLU NorCal, and SFGov TV. We also want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, the original inhabitants of San Francisco. We recognize that we benefit from living here. Now, I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for tonight, Laura Wennis. Ms. Wennis is an independent, applause, thank you. Ms. Wennis is an independent journalist who has covered San Francisco and the Bay Area through writing, audio, and video for a decade. Her roles have included reporting, producing, editing, event production, and project management in various media. She's launched and hosts several civic engagement-focused news podcasts for local newsrooms, including the San Francisco Public Press and the San Francisco Chronicle. Her reporting has centered on community needs and leadership on beats like homelessness and housing, as well as elections and governance. She co-founded and reports for the Tenderloin Voice, a publication that collaborates with readers to produce coverage.
Thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I am really thrilled to see that so many of you are joining us to hear from the candidates for the 2026 election for California's Congressional District 11. Candidates, welcome and thank you for participating. We look forward to hearing your views and your strategies on key issues affecting California District 11 and our city. This forum is being live streamed and recorded. It will be on the League's and on SFGov TV's YouTube and cable channels. We'd like to sincerely thank SFGov TV, who does a fantastic job recording and live streaming these nonpartisan forums all over San Francisco. The League teams up with them every election season. And now I want to let our audience know some important forum rules. For those watching online, you are in listen-only mode. Q&A and chat features are turned off. For those in the room with us, please be respectful and refrain from making noise, no booing, and please hold your applause until the end. This helps ensure that everybody in the room and watching online can hear the candidates, and it also makes the video's closed captions and audio clear for those viewing remotely or watching the recording. Here are the rules for the forum for candidates. You will have 3 minutes to make opening statements and 2 minutes for closing statements. Opening statements will be in alphabetical order by last name. Closing statements will be in reverse alphabetical order by last name. Each of you will have the opportunity to answer the same questions. I'll rotate the order in which you answer the questions. You'll have 2 minutes for each response. The questions I will ask were selected from those submitted in advance by residents and organizations in the district. A League member will provide you with a visual indication of how much time you have left for each answer. Candidates, do you see the timekeeper in the front row? Thank you. Very good. Your responses to questions should be about the issues or policy. We ask that you do not direct your responses to other candidates or even mention other candidates' names. No, the questions were selected from registrants in advance. Sorry. Your responses to questions, candidates, should be about the issues or the policy. We ask that you do not direct your responses to other candidates, even mention their names. Please refrain from any attacks on other candidates. This is a forum, not a debate. If you have a rebuttal, you don't get extra time. Instead, please fit the rebuttal into your time responding to another question or into your closing statement. Voters, you have important decisions to make for the June 2nd election. Tonight's forum is a great opportunity to learn about the candidates before you vote. So let's begin. We'll start with opening statements. We'll go in alphabetical order by last name. In your opening statement, please introduce yourself and share why you're running for District 11 representative. Please stay within the 3-minute time limit, and you can see the timekeeper in front of you. We'll start with Mr. Chakrabarty.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. My name is Shoikat Chakrabarty. And my parents came to this country back in the 70s with literally $8 in their pockets. But they came here because they knew they'd be able to provide a better life for their family. And they're right. Where they grew up poor in India, I grew up middle class, going to public schools. But I also saw them sacrifice. They would save every extra dollar to either give back to our family living in poverty in India or to support our immigrant community here. Because they saw getting a visa here as a lottery ticket. So it was their duty to give back. So that really shaped me. When I came out to San Francisco at age 23, I initially worked in the tech industry. I thought I'd be solving the big problems, using technology. But living here, seeing the cost of living crushing my neighbors, seeing my neighbors getting displaced, I realized I was working on the wrong problems, so I quit. And I ended up joining the Bernie campaign, and I've spent the last 10 years of my life fighting to unrig this rigged economic system. So I'm running right now, because in all that time, I've never seen a change moment like this one. Zoran won in New York. There are insurgent candidates running across the country challenging the status quo, and I've been reaching out to them to organize a team of us who will go to DC and change the system, because we have to change the system. That American dream that my parents were able to achieve, that's dead today. Trump's dragging us into World War III. AI might wipe out half our jobs, and the cost of living is still crushing San Franciscans. Politics, as usual, has failed. Look, DC is not like Sacramento or City Hall, where Democrats have a supermajority. Backroom deals might work to push some reforms here, but change works differently in Washington. We need someone who knows how to turn popular outrage into political power in Washington. And that's the work I did with Justice Democrats. In 2018, after Trump won the first time, we took the popular outrage of that moment and turned it into people-powered campaigns that challenged not just Republicans, but also corporate Democrats at a time that no one else had the guts to do it. That's how we elected AOC and the squad. We need someone who knows how to build movements and capture attention and use that to change what's politically possible in DC. And that's the work I did as AOC's chief of staff, where I led the creation of the Green New Deal. And by working with outside movements and going up against our own party leadership, we managed to get the Democrats from no climate action to passing the largest investment in climate in history. We need someone who's going to be willing to break the corporate stranglehold of money in politics. That's why I don't take any corporate money in my campaign. And we need someone who's willing to go up not just against Republicans, but a failed Democratic establishment as well. Because if we want to truly fight Trump and build an economy for all, we have to completely change the direction and leadership of the Democratic Party, and I'm the only one here willing to do that, because I'm not running to join that establishment. I'm running to change it.
Thank you. Supervisor Chan.
Thank you. I'm currently a member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, also Budget Committee Chair. During the time that I've been Budget Committee Chair, I've worked with Mayor Lyndon Breed for the COVID recovery, and as most recently with Mayor Daniel Lurie facing the Trump administration cuts to San Francisco around healthcare, our education, and our food security. It is an unprecedented time. What we have done last year is that we put $400 million on reserve to safeguard cuts to healthcare, to safeguard Trump's cuts to healthcare. We make sure that when Trump cuts SNAP, Food Assistance Program, San Franciscans, through your help, as well as our city governments, together we make sure that we can support 112,000 individuals that receive those food security programming. And that's inclusive of 48,000 seniors and 18,000 children. And when Trump threatened to send National Guard to San Francisco, we make sure that we have additional money, $3.5 million, to a total of $12.5 million to support our immigration community, to make sure that they have immigration defense fund, so that we have legal support in court for them. But we know that is not enough. We have to do more. So when Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi decided not to run for re-election, we say, what can we do for San Franciscans? What can we do for the working people here? We need to bring a working people's agenda from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. So we jump in this race and we build a great coalition of working people. It's the reason why our campaign is the only campaign endorsed by nurses, teachers, firefighters, and hotel workers. And they've been great. And they know that they've been part of this campaign because they know that they're not sending Connie Chan from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. They're sending the working people from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. Look, I know that we have some choices to make, San Franciscans, very soon. That is in about a week. Ballots will be landing in your mailbox. In about 30 days, on June 2nd, we have some choices to make. And the choice before you is, who is going to really represent us? Is it going to be someone who actually doesn't have the record and that we only know him because he bought all the digital ads on your airwave? Or someone that is bankrolled by the billionaires? And it is a time for us to make that decision. And we are the campaign for the working people. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Wiener.
Thank you, and thank you to UCSF for hosting us tonight. I'm Scott Wiener, and since 1997, I have poured myself into the San Francisco community to make this community stronger, and I've dedicated my life to this community. I grew up as a closeted gay kid and as a Jew in a community that had almost no Jews. And growing up during the mass die-off that was the HIV/AIDS disaster, I learned very early on as a kid that government and elections aren't just about what you might like or what you might want. For so many people, it's about life and death. And we are seeing that now play out in an extreme way as they try to destroy our healthcare system, as they try to destroy scientific research, as they try to destroy our education system, as they try to take food away from low-income kids, and on and on. And change starts now, and in November, we're going to start scraping them out of office. We're going to take back the House. I hope we take back the Senate too, and then 2 years later, we can take back everything. And then the hard work starts of repairing the extreme damage that they have done, and that takes time. But getting them out of office and repairing the harm that they've done is not enough. And if that's all we do, then we're going to be right back here again with another disaster. We have to change and do things differently, and that means Democrats too. We can't go back to the old ways and the status quo. We have to actually fix housing and make it so that people can afford housing. We need universal health care, Medicare for all, so people aren't falling through the cracks and having an epidemic of medical bankruptcies where people have to make those choices. Do I bring my kid to the hospital and go bankrupt? Or do I save my kid? Or do I not take my kid and my kid might die, but I don't go bankrupt? No one should have to make those choices. There is so much to do to lower people's cost of living and stabilize people, and I am the only candidate in this race who has shown that I can actually not just talk about making change. It's really easy to talk about making change, to have a lot of hot takes, to go on a lot of podcasts. It's a lot harder to get it done. I played a key role in building a national movement to build more housing, and we are making change. I have taken on the insurance industry to force them to cover more mental health treatments. I have taken on PG&E. I have taken on big tech to regulate AI. And I've taken on the oil industry to hold them accountable. I don't always win, but I often do. And I know how to put together the coalitions to get it done and deliver for this community, and I will do that in Congress.
Thank you all for your opening statements. Please now take 2 minutes to answer all the following questions. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or H.R. 1, will compromise patient health and access to care. 14 million Americans could lose health care coverage entirely. Premiums could increase for covered California, and state provider taxes that support Medicaid and Medi-Cal as it's known here, will be limited and progressively decreased. About 30% of California residents and a full half of our children are covered by Medi-Cal. H.R. 1 institutes work requirements for Medi-Cal, cuts funding to Planned Parenthood, to nutrition support programs, to Medi-Cal for certain immigrants, and cuts premium assistance for Affordable Care Act policies. If elected, how will you address the gaps created by these cuts? And do you see a path towards single-payer health care? We'll start with Senator Wiener.
Absolutely, we have a path. And when we take back the House in November, even if that's the only House we take back, we have to use every ounce of leverage and power that we have, even though we don't control everything, to reverse the Medicaid cuts and the Affordable Care Act cuts, in addition to the SNAP cuts. We need to, because we will have the ability to say we're not passing a budget, we're not keeping the government open if you're going to destroy our healthcare system. And so that work starts immediately, not caving in and using every ounce of leverage that we have. We then, as we accrue power, we need to do the work, frankly, that we've done in California, to hold insurance companies accountable to actually cover care, to reduce prior authorizations, to cap copays and prescription drug costs, to make sure that people are not falling through the cracks. And yes, we must move towards Medicare for all. We need truly universal health care. It's absurd that health care in this country is tied to people's jobs. That is an artifact of history that needs to be gotten rid of. The idea that people are like, I want to change jobs, but if I change my job, I can't change jobs because I'll lose my health care. It's an absurd system, and that's why Medicare for all, universal health care, is critically important, so that everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what your situation, if you need health care, it's there for you. And we must do that in this country. But until we get there, we need to fix and improve the system that we have, and that means accountability to make sure that it is patients first and people are not going bankrupt because they get sick.
Thank you. Supervisor Chan.
Well, in San Francisco alone, the city received actually over $1 billion of Medicaid funding every year, and that is critical for San Franciscans. And in Congress, what we have to do first is to not only reverse the cuts that Trump administration have put forward, we also need to allow Medicaid to be able to directly negotiate with pharmaceutical companies to lower the drug prices, and that we have to continue to expand gender-affirming care as well as reproductive care. We absolutely also have to reverse the cuts to National Health Institute funding to make sure that we continue those critical research for all the diseases, of course, including cancer treatments, Alzheimer's. Those are all very critical. And the way that we're going to approach it and go about it is to make sure that not only that we take back the House in this November, but when we do, that we go through the appropriation bill and that we understand through appropriation bills that we also have the opportunity through the reconciliation bills that we be able to find everywhere that we could to make sure that we continue to reverse those cuts and find ways to continue to get those funding done. And that, at the same time, is the reason why I am excited the fact that we are endorsed by nurses that they really do know how we can actually build that coalition for Medicare for all day one. They've been doing this in California, and they're going to continue to push it for the nation, and I'm very excited about that coalition that we can build. Everything that we actually have to do is not just about in Congress, but to also make sure that we have a coalition, and on day one, we're ready to do the work.
Thank you. Mr. Chakrabarty.
So it's one thing to say that we have to reverse the cuts. Of course we have to reverse the cuts. The question is, how do we do that? Right now, Democrats have points of leverage on these budget negotiation fights, on the debt ceiling fights. And in those moments, Democrats haven't always fought. I mean, that's how they caved the last time that we saw these ACA cuts and Medicaid cuts come down the line. So what I will do is organize a caucus of us, and that's what I'm doing right now with people running around the country. I'm reaching out to them to build a plan so that when we go in, there will be a caucus of us who will hold the vote, who will force Democrats to fight. Because it's not enough to say, we should do this. I will do this. Now, with Medicare for all, of course we can get there. And if we can't get there in this election and the next, I don't know when else we could, because this is the moment where people are demanding it. Now the question is, how do we get there? Because we know that is, of course, Republicans aren't going to vote for Medicare for all, but also half the Democratic Party isn't there. So we have to actually change the Democratic Party. So the thing I will do is I will support primary challengers and other insurgents running around the country who are challenging Democratic members of our own party who don't support Medicare for all. And I'll change Democratic Party leadership so we have one that will give us a vote on Medicare for all. Now the thing about that is challenging power like that is actually how we change what's politically possible in DC. When I did this work with Justice Democrats back in 2017, Medicare for All at the beginning of 2017 had about 60 co-sponsors. But because we threatened primary challengers, we said, hey, if you don't support this, we might take your seat. We managed to get more than half of the Democratic caucus to co-sponsor Medicare for All. That's how you make change happen in DC. You have to take those risks. And the thing is, taking risks like that does threaten your long-term political career. You're going to ruffle some feathers. But I don't care about doing that because I'm going in there to try to take this moment of possibility we have right now and make sure we get Medicare for all front and center in any campaign that's running in 2028 because we can get it done.
Thank you. Misinformation around science and medicine is being promoted at the highest government levels. Americans are losing access to vaccines, clinical trials, and chronic disease and reproductive health care. How will you help to restore access to these life-saving preventative medicines and treatments and provide funding for the development of new public health initiatives? We'll start this time with Supervisor Chan.
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, that we absolutely have to reverse the cuts to our National Health Institute. This is a moment where I have been having conversation with doctors and nurses on a local level, recognizing their frustration. When they actually went last year to the Capitol Hill and lobby, they have conversation, according to them, and telling me their frustration is that they have conversation with Democrats. But guess what? Let's not give the Republicans a pass, because what I learned from these doctors, they told me that when they have conversation with Republicans, Congress member, they too actually recognize that how critical these fundings must be, and yet they are too afraid of Trump. Let's actually focus on Trump. Trump is actually the biggest problem that is threatening our nation. Yes, Democrats need to do more, but Trump is the problem. And we ought to be able to build a coalition along with our doctors and nurses and those who know science, not just believe in it, but actually knows it, and build that coalition in Washington, D.C. and face Trump and his administration head on. It is not enough to just attack the Democrats. More importantly, it is to make sure that that whole Trump administration to do the right thing, and that is where Congress ought to exercise its power of oversight to hold Trump administration accountable and inclusive, reversing these cuts to national health institutes, continue to fund our Department of Health, and making sure that we do the right thing with vaccination and so much more. And that is the power of Congress that we must make sure that we actually exercise.
Thank you. Mr. Chakrabarty?
Yeah, Trump has done almost irrecoverable damage to our national health institutes, to our national science and research foundations. And of course, we have to get rid of Trump to do anything here. But the question is, how do we get to Trump in the first place, right? Because what we had before this, that was clearly not working. That's what led to Donald Trump. Working people have been working longer and longer hours to afford less and less. That's been going on for decades. Young people today are not going to do as well as their parents. That's, the rage that people feel at that system, that's what got Trump elected. So it's not enough for us to just say we're against Donald Trump and we have to restore what was there. We have to build something new. We have to build something new. And so what that means when it comes to our national health institutions and our science and research institutions, we should look at how we built these in the first place. A lot of these got built during the World War II era and right in the post-war era, when the country was positive looking. We actually had a reason to build these institutions, and people saw them as connected to their own lives. So we have to renew these institutions, fix the problems that they had previously, because they did have some issues, but do it in the context of national renewal, of a real plan to build up our economy, to make life better for people, so people know why these institutions exist. Because if you don't build up the political capital for these institutions, that's what makes it possible to gut them so easily. Look, when I was in Congress, I remember talking to some Democrats in the Energy and Commerce Commission, and they were telling me about some of the good stuff they had done. And I was like, why don't you talk about any of this, right? And they were saying, well, we don't want to talk about it because that might polarize the issue, and then the Republicans will attack it. Short term, that might make some sense, but long term, that has been a terrible strategy. That's why when these institutions got gutted, we didn't see the public backlash that we should have. So we have to renew these institutions, but it has to be part of a vision. It has to be like our version of the New Deal. Why are we building this stuff up? And make sure that we fix the problems that are there before so that we have the political capital so they don't get gutted again in the future.
Thank you. Senator Wiener.
Yeah, I mean, science for the last 80 years has been one of the pillars of American prosperity, and it's one of the pillars of California's prosperity at the heart of who we are, particularly in California. And what they are doing to the federal science agencies is just a disaster, and it's incomprehensible that why would anyone cut Alzheimer's research and cancer research and diabetes research? It's psychopathic. And so, yes, we need to restore these agencies. They've been gutted, not just their funding, but their staffing. We're seeing a brain drain of scientists who are leaving the country, going to Canada or Europe or China or elsewhere where they will be allowed to actually do research and have consistent funding. And the harm that this will do to our country if we don't reverse it is extraordinary. And so we need to rebuild these agencies. Of course, you always want to look for ways to do it, have them be even better than before, but these cuts must be reversed. We need to absolutely clean house in terms of all the people who have been spreading vaccine misinformation. They're trying to destroy access to vaccines, to PrEP, to so many kinds of preventative care. And then there's, of course, the destruction of USAID, and there are people dying around the world because of what they did to USAID. And, of course, social media helps spread this misinformation around vaccines and otherwise, and there needs to be accountability for the social media platforms. This is a high priority for me, and I'm actually working on it right now. I put together a huge coalition to try to pass a science bond in California to say that whatever happens with the federal government, we need to have our own scientific funding mechanism and structures in California so that we do not have a brain drain from California. And we're working with a huge labor, healthcare, science, university coalition to try to get that done. So I'm doing that work now, and I will do it in Congress.
Thank you. Economists estimate that 3 to 7 million new units of housing are needed across the U.S., which would take several decades to build at the current rate of construction. How can we fast-track building affordable housing to accommodate these needs? We'll start with Mr. Chakrabarty.
Yeah, the status quo on housing right now is completely broken. Like, we are doing this with one hand tied behind our backs. The first apartment I rented when I came out to San Francisco was $500 a month, right? That same place today is $1,500 a month. So what we have been doing is not working. We have to go way bigger, and that's why I have a national housing plan that centers around 4 big things. First, it will provide federal incentives for cities that make it faster to construct housing, cut red tape, do zoning reform, and that's good stuff. But in San Francisco, we're seeing that that alone is not enough because we have about 70,000 units of housing in SF today that have been permitted that are not getting built. It's because the cost of money is too high, construction costs are too high, labor costs are too high. And so the second piece of my plan is to create a new federal financing entity that will directly provide low-cost loans to make sure this housing gets built. It could also do more than that. It can spin off a public developer to build the housing directly. It could even do things like stockpile lumber and steel to control inflation in the construction industry. We used to have this entity back in the New Deal World War II era, and we got rid of it. The third piece is while we're doing all this building, we have to make sure tenants don't get displaced. So I call for doubling rental vouchers, for having federal support for tenants unions, and for things called community land trust that makes land permanently affordable. And finally, we have to make sure that we don't use housing as a poker chip to trade on Wall Street. And so that's why I call for banning large corporations like private equity and hedge funds from buying up single-family homes. Now, a big vision on housing like that, that's simply not possible in our Congress today. There are too many corporate interests that are profiting off of the broken status quo today. To get something like this done, we have to change what's politically possible there. And that is going to require changing not just the Republicans, but also Democratic Party leadership. We have to go into 2028 where housing is at the forefront of what we're doing, and people are thinking big enough to do things like public financing and social housing, repealing the Fair Cloth Amendment, which currently prevents us from building any social housing. That is the work I have done before and I will do on housing.
Senator Wiener.
Yeah, I agree. We have to change what's politically possible on housing, and I've actually done that in California over the last decade. When I got into office, California was completely broken on housing in terms of zoning, in terms of it taking many years to get a permit, and we were building very, very, very little. And we went about building an entire movement here and nationally, and we completely changed how California approaches housing. And so last year, Mayor Lurie proposed and then signed into law his family zoning plan to upzone swaths of San Francisco. That happened because of a law that I passed. Nearly 5,000 affordable below market rate homes have been built in San Francisco under just one law that I passed in the legislature. We've delivered billions of dollars in funding for affordable housing, and we have just really completely changed how housing is done in California. So I don't just talk about it, I do the work and deliver. And we need to take this work national. This is no longer just a big city issue or a California issue. We have big portions of this country that are suffering. And when we talked a lot in the last election about the cost of eggs, it's the cost of housing that is crushing people more than anything else. And so I have a plan, it's on our website if you want to check it out, that we need to build 8 million homes over the next decade, including a massive investment in mixed income social housing, public-private partnerships with housing that people pay rent based on their income. We need to dramatically expand Section 8 vouchers to stabilize low-income renters and make it easier for landlords to participate in the program. It's way too complex now, and some of them just give up. We need to pay cities for housing that is actually built so that cities don't view housing as a burden, but as a benefit. And we need to stabilize and expand our skilled construction workforce, which is boom-bust right now, and we can do all of these things.
Thank you. Supervisor Chan?
There are two key elements to build housing: land and money. And let's talk about money first. And absolutely that we got to make sure that we have federal funding, be it grant and be it actually loans, to be able to build those housing. And where is that money gonna come from? It's progressive taxation. And so that money, we can make sure we increase rental subsidies, we increase the numbers of units that we can build. But it's not just for low income or very low income housing where we traditionally have been building through federal funding. We ought to also build middle income housing. And it's the housing that we see in San Francisco. It's actually much needed for our workforce, like teachers. And of course, we want to see how we can also build. Where do we build? And this is where the land banking as a program comes from. It will be really great to see that public land, be it federal-owned land or city-owned land, as well as empty lots that actually can be utilized and be able to be built, and so that we do not have to worry about displacement. But of course, overall, right now at this moment, how do we also stabilize the existing housing stock that we have? Because what we have right now is the most that people can afford at this moment, even though rent is too high, so we do need rental subsidies. And also on the federal level, what we have to do is to make sure that very similarly in San Francisco, we have a tenants' rights program to help our tenants to be able to stabilize their rent, is something that we've got to do on the federal level. And of course, I support the ban for a private equity firm like Blackstone to buy up residential units everywhere in the nation to eat up those stock for investments. We got to be able to stabilize the housing stock that we currently have.
Thank you. Hundreds of non-congregate, low barrier to entry shelter beds for formerly homeless people have been recently slated for closure in San Francisco. Do you favor short-term shelter and linking housing to treatment and/or abstinence, or do you favor low barrier, longer-term shelter and housing opportunities? How would you pursue policy that aligns with your preferred approach if elected? We'll start with Senator Wiener.
I support both, and I think we need an all-of-the-above approach. We need places where people can go with low barriers and where they do not need to if they're still using, we will accept them. And those low barriers have to exist, and we need both transitional and supportive housing where it's a housing first model, and I've been a supporter of the housing first model. There are some people who benefit from a sober environment, and they should be able to access that. I think sometimes in these debates, it gets pitted as an either or, and it's not an either or. We can do both. It's similar to like, do you like market rate housing or below market rate housing? The answer is both. And so I think that each of these models has a lot of power and a lot of merit to it, and we should do both.
Thank you. Supervisor Chan?
We just had a hearing today at the Budget Committee. San Franciscans, you should be very proud of yourself. You do invest in Proposition C dollars, and that's well over $370 million per year investing in solving our homelessness. I do believe the best way to solve homelessness is to prevent it from happening at first place. So that means we invest in rental subsidies, we invest in these long-term housing to keep people housed. And when people that actually already are homeless, and especially those have been chronically homeless, typically they do deal with a health issue, be it behavioral health or mental health, or that other substance abuse issues. That is what we have to do is when we provide shelter, even short term, but absolutely long term, it cannot just be housing or shelter. It actually have to have services on site as well. And that is the investment model that San Franciscans have been investing towards and continue to increase. And this is a moment where we also have seen that the federal government is cutting that funding. But before that, the Biden administration allows San Francisco what we call continuum of care, meaning that through Medicaid reimbursements, we also get housing subsidies for individuals that are at risk of homelessness or are already homeless. And this is why health care is part of the housing reform, particularly for those who suffer homelessness and with any type of public health issues like mental health or drug addiction. This is what we have to do in San Francisco. Housing alone, building housing alone, or having this debate about is it shelter or long-term housing? Absolutely housing first, but we can do more at the front end when people are seeking for shelter to include healthcare at that aspect, and that will help us to solve the problem in the long term.
Mr. Chakrabarty?
Yes, we have to have different solutions for the different needs that our unhoused population has today. And so we absolutely do need temporary shelter to just get people off the streets as fast as possible. But then we also need to invest in permanent supportive housing. And this has been where a lot of my nonprofit work has been working with groups like Housing Accelerator Fund, which have done amazing work to get permanent supportive housing units built in the city. The problem right now is at a federal government level with the continuum of care grants, that money gets used for multitudes of uses, and only 1/5 of it is used for funding shelters or permanent supportive housing. We basically don't have any source of federal money that can directly fund building out either of these sorts of supports. And so we have to get a new permanent source of funding to build out shelters, to build out permanent supportive housing, and then to actually make sure we're getting the cost of living crisis down so people don't become homeless in the first place. Because everyone in this room, you've probably seen those charts that show how San Francisco keeps spending more and more on homelessness while the number of unsheltered homeless stays like this, right? The thing you don't see in that chart is the number of people at risk of becoming homeless is going up like this. And that's because the cost of living is going up like this. So if we can't get a handle on the cost of living, on the cost of housing, cost of healthcare, then we're always gonna be playing defense. And that means we have to pass universal healthcare so that people have access to healthcare if they want. We have to have things like social housing to build permanently affordable housing. We have to make sure utilities become cheap. We have to have public groceries so people can afford food. We have to make sure people stay in the homes they're in. And once we get that problem under control, the number of unsheltered homeless in San Francisco, it's large, but it's a few thousand people. It can be handled, but that has to be individualized support and individualized solutions for the different situations that people are in.
Thank you. Millions of dollars in federal grant funding have been rescinded by federal agencies from UC basic and clinical research studies, and President Trump's 2027 budget proposal cuts NIH funding by $5 billion. Many established scientists face uncertainty about their grant funding, and young scientists are concerned about their careers. What paths do you see to restore and to grow funding for science, and how would you make sure that careers in science are viable? Supervisor Chan.
We want to thank, our Attorney General. I also want to, on a local level, thank Attorney General Rob Bonta, and on a local level, our City Attorney David Chu, that really, in collaboration with other attorneys across the nation, that many of these lawsuits has been filed on behalf of San Franciscans and California to ensure that not just the health science funding, but many fundings across the nation, and really particularly in San Francisco and California, that we can not only not allowing the clawback, but that we can continue to receive those funding. We do see that, there's conditions that we're going to see, be it around public charge, be it around immigration, and of course, when it comes to gender affirming care and reproductive care, that all these actually, and including of DEI, these are all putting a lot of our fundings, are threatening our fundings from the Trump administration. I do believe that we need to continue to support our court, our lawyers, to fight against these, but absolutely in Congress, that is, again, the Congress actually need to stand up to have that power oversight and push back through the appropriation bill and being able to stand firm and push back on these conditions that it's being put on all the institutions, including our higher education, in order for them to receive this funding, and to also fight back in both in appropriation bill and defense funding. It is not acceptable for Trump administration spending $1.5 trillion in defense fund, and that is 44% of new funding. We need to take back that funding and reinvest it in healthcare and education, and absolutely it is time for Congress to stand up and push back.
Mr. Chakrabarty?
Yeah, the problem that we have right now with the massive amounts of cuts that have happened to our research and science institutions is, for years, America's been the place that's attracted the best and brightest from around the world, the scientists and research from all over the world. And because of our current situation, I have friends who are deciding where to build their careers, and they're not picking America, right? They're going to Europe, they're going to Australia, some are going to China. And we're still at a place where people are holding their breath to see what happens after Trump. We might be able to save this, but we're in a very precarious place because once we lose this, it's going to be really, really hard to build it back up. Now, we, of course, in the first term, have to do whatever we can to get the amount of money back in. And the amounts of money that we're talking about are not that much. So we can do it, again, and where we have points of leverage, like the budget shutdown fights, when we go through the appropriations process. If we actually hold the line and fight, we're talking about a few $1 billion. That's totally possible to get back and at least stem the bleeding. But going into 2028, I do believe we have to reimagine what these science and research institutions look like, because the current ones had some existing problems. Anyone who's ever gone through a grant-making process, you know how difficult it is to get grants for certain kinds of science and research. We have a chance to renew this, so I don't think it should be enough that we just bring funding back to what we had. I believe we should renew these institutions and then tie them to a real economic vision of what sorts of jobs we're going to be creating, right? Like right now in our federal government, the only institution that really ties research to actual industry is DARPA. We just do it for defense. But we should be doing that for clean energy technologies. We should be doing it for semiconductor factories. We should have a way as a nation to intentionally develop our economies to build up the industries that these institutions are part of. That's the work I've been doing at my think tank at New Consensus, where we've developed a comprehensive detailed plan called A Mission for America, for how exactly do you build industries like that and provide prosperity for all. It's kind of like our version of a Project 2025, but in reverse. So we can absolutely do it, but that's going to happen in 2028.
Thank you. Senator Wiener?
Yeah, this is very, very real. I was recently, I was with my cousin's daughter, who is, she's this just absolute genius, and she's about to finish her applied physics PhD at MIT. And she said to me, my partner and I, he's also a genius physics PhD, we may go to Europe because there's no funding here anymore. And so the brain drain is real. And we will be worse off as a country in terms of healthcare, in terms of climate science, in terms of so many ways that science makes us better, improves people's lives, makes people healthier, and makes us more prosperous. And that's why I'm doing the work at the state level to try to pursue the science bond, and why I will prioritize it, science funding at the federal level. But also what's going on here, it's an attack on higher education. Because they're going after the UC, but not only the UC, to pull back science funding and to send around, you may have seen these quote-unquote settlements, where they'll say you have to agree to all this MAGA ideology and sign off on it and commit to implement it at your university around trans people, around immigrants, around recognizing that there are different ethnic backgrounds and different people. Not everyone is the same, and unless you do that, we're going to pull your money away. It is absolutely horrific, and I'm proud that the UC has stood up against it, and it is absolutely an attack on academic freedom and on critical thinking, and it needs to stop.
Artificial intelligence has shown great promise in facilitating drug development in some areas of basic research. However, it also poses great risks and costs to society. We have seen some efforts to regulate it. Where do you stand on AI regulation, and what are some concrete steps that could be taken to protect society from potential harms caused by AI? Mr. Chakrabarty.
Yeah, with artificial intelligence, I mean, this is a technology that could be used for good, but it could also lead to society-wide disruption. I mean, right now we're looking at a technology that might wipe out half our jobs. It might even wipe out humanity itself. That's what the creators of this technology are saying. And we've said that that kind of decision-making power over our entire society should be in the hands of a few CEOs. I think that makes no sense. I believe that the regulations we're seeing right now are way too small to handle this technology. We fundamentally need to be talking about who controls how this technology is introduced into society, who's controlling this technology. And, you know, I believe the path we're going down right now, we're looking at a future, potentially, where a few corporations own huge swaths of the economy while everybody else ends up in what they're calling a permanent underclass. It's a really dystopian vision, right? But we could try to instead head towards a Star Trek future where we have enough for all humanity. We're actually using this to do the good stuff. So one, I believe labor should have a say on how the technology gets introduced into our workforce. If there's gonna be all these productivity gains, that should mean shorter work weeks, higher wages, not just jobs getting replaced. Two, I believe we should have publicly owned artificial intelligence, where we are using the technology for the good stuff, like disease discovery or disease, solving diseases and trying to cure cancer, and not just for profit-driven slop feeds. And the way we could get there is at some point this investment bubble might burst. And when that happens, these companies are gonna come to the government asking for a bailout. In that moment, we shouldn't bail them out. Instead, we buy out the assets for pennies on the dollar and roll them into a publicly owned national AI lab and use this technology for good. But in addition to this, we have to invest in an economy that isn't just AI. If you take AI out of our economy right now, we're basically doing nothing else. But there's all this other work to do. There's caretaking work. We have to build a whole clean economy to tackle climate change. And we simply don't have the tools to do that kind of intentional development in our economy. And that's the work that I've done at my think tank. And we have to invest in building those jobs and training people into those jobs.
Thank you. Senator Wiener.
Yeah, so I'm proud that San Francisco is the beating heart of AI innovation, and AI has the potential to make life better in terms of curing diseases, helping us solve climate change, and in so many other ways. But this is powerful technology, and perhaps the most powerful technology, and it creates huge risks. And historically, we have, in this country, we have allowed technology just to proceed without getting ahead of those risks. We still don't have a federal data privacy law. We let social media run amok, and we've seen some of the carnage in terms of kids' mental health and so on and so forth. And so we have to get ahead of those risks and not just let it run amok. And so I have done a lot of work in this space. We spent 2 years doing battle with big tech to pass the strongest AI safety regulation in the country. The governor vetoed it the first year, and then we got it passed the second year, and it was trench warfare with the big tech companies, but we got it done. And there's a lot more work to do, but it was a really huge first step. We need to take that work national. We need to address deepfakes and misinformation and some of these just very tangible problems that are harming people. We need to make sure that we are not just allowing the workforce impacts and the potential vaporization of millions and millions of jobs just to happen, which is historically what we've done around technology in this country, but it has never moved this quickly and it's never impacted this many jobs potentially at the same time. And so we have to get ahead of that in terms of making sure that people, first of all, do not just lose everything if their job gets eliminated, that they have that safety net around universal health care, around a universal basic income, access to education and training so that people are not just thrown under the bus. We can't just let it play out. We have to get ahead of it.
Supervisor Chan?
There are two principles to regulate AI, and one is really safety, making sure ensuring consumer safety, and the second of it is to make sure that it protects the workforce. It doesn't take job away. And so with these two principles, we create a federal framework allowing local jurisdiction like city governments, like state government, to be able to create specific regulation addressing the specific needs and industry for when they utilize AI. And that inclusive of, for example, healthcare. The AI is being used in healthcare, AI in education environment, AI in the entertainment industry. We have to make sure that AI is here, just like any other technology is already here, but then how do we have the principle based on safety, consumer safety, as well as workforce protection, then we regulate accordingly. Look, this is the moment that we can see we have to also deal with data center. Data center is an issue. It is here at the doorstep in San Francisco. But San Franciscans, we have dealt with this before, like server farm during the tech boom. We can regulate them. If there isn't a moratorium right now in Congress proposed by Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman AOC, if that doesn't go through, both, again, allowing local jurisdiction to figure out specific regulation to address and regulate these data center and what we also formerly known as server farm. We have dealt with them before. We know that we can regulate them through zoning. We can regulate them through permitting. We can regulate them through community benefits process to ensure that we can protect our environment, protect our workforce. We have done that. I have done that similarly in San Francisco for parcel delivery, permitting. That is for companies like Amazon to make sure, again, we protect the workforce, we regulate them on our streets, and this is something we can do on a federal level in Congress.
Thank you. The U.S. immigration system has long been inadequate to deal with the numbers of people seeking to live and work in the U.S., and San Francisco's immigration court is being rapidly dismantled. At the same time, our aging workforce needs young people to fill many jobs. What steps would you take to restructure immigration so that our workforce needs will be met and immigrants can be accommodated lawfully, compassionately, and more efficiently? Senator Wiener.
This is one where we need to tear it down and build it back up. ICE needs to be abolished. I first said that in 2018, and I still believe it's true now. It's a broken agency that has inflicted terror in our communities, so we need to get rid of it. We need to move that function back to the Department of Justice where it was before 9/11 and make DOJ much more independent of the president. DOJ should not be the personal law firm of the president. We're seeing how that's playing out now in terms of abuse of the legal system. People sometimes say, hey, don't come here without documents, just do it the legal way. Well, there's increasingly not a legal way anymore. When my great-grandparents and grandparents immigrated here from Eastern Europe and Russia, Jews fleeing violence, they were able to come here and establish residency and make lives for themselves. And when people are coming here from Central America or from the Middle East or from Asia, they should be able to come here and make lives for themselves, and there should be an actual pathway to have documentation and ultimately to become citizens. Immigrants make our country better. They always have. More vibrant, stronger, better, and that is true today. And people who particularly risk their lives to come here because they want better lives for their families, those are exactly the kind of people who make your community even better. And so we need to completely redo the system to actually encourage immigration and to make sure that immigrants who have been here, who are working here, raising their families here, are part of our community and have an actual pathway to citizenship. It's DACA, yes, but it's not just DACA. There are so many people who are in the shadows, who are paying taxes, and they need to have a pathway to citizenship.
Supervisor Chan?
Most recently, Bay Area Council has issued a report indicating that more than 2 million immigrants living in San Francisco Bay Area, and that out of which more than 500,000 of them are actually undocumented. With that immigrant community living in and working in San Francisco Bay Area, we collectively generate about $67 billion worth of GDP. If we were to lose and allowing Trump administration deport that more than 500,000 undocumented immigrants, we're going to set to lose $8.4 billion of tax revenue in San Francisco Bay Area alone. That tells us that immigrants contribute to our local economy already, and they've been. Look at California as a sanctuary state. We are the 4th largest economy in the world, and I absolutely believe that immigrant community have greatly contributed to that. So what is happening with Trump administration? They have threatened our birthright citizenship, our naturalized citizenship. We absolutely have to affirm that to stabilize the immigrant community in San Francisco and California and across the nation. We know that from immigrant law professor Bill Heng has indicated that there are actually 15% of entire nation, 15% of undocumented immigrants can actually become citizen, but they don't have the resources, the legal resources to do so. Just like San Francisco, we can invest in the federal government for the immigration legal resources to make sure that we can help DACA, we can help work permits and student visa and many others to actually have a meaningful pathway to citizenship. And that is how we actually protect our immigrant community and develop a healthy workforce for the next generation.
Mr. Chakrabarty?
Yeah, ICE right now is not an immigration enforcement agency. It is Trump's personal paramilitary. I mean, it's got the same budget as a military of Canada. And back when I was running Justice Democrats, we saw this coming. That's why we actually led the call to abolish ICE back in 2017 and popularize that, because we saw where this was headed. Now the question is, how do we get there? Because even in 2026, after I get elected, we have to claw back the money from ICE, and that's gonna mean holding the line when we have points of negotiation. This is what Democrats should have done. Back a few months ago when Alex Preddy got murdered, the entire nation was watching. People were so upset with ICE. That would have been the time to say, we're gonna claw back the $75 billion we gave to ICE, and we're gonna hold the line, capture that national attention, and use it for political leverage on the inside. Instead, what the Democrats did is they passed a 2-week funding bill, and then they held the line on things like body cameras. That won't really make a difference. But by that point, attention had moved on. So we have to use attention to actually win these fights. We also have to be saying right now that if Democrats win, we are gonna hold ICE agents accountable for their violations, so they stop doing the violations right now. Now, we also have to make sure we have a pathway to citizenship for undocumented folks here, and I say anybody who's been here for over 5 years, who's paid their taxes, done everything right, you should have a pathway to citizenship right away. Now, when we talk about what the immigration system should look like, I think about what it used to be when my parents got here. You know, back then, we had just had decades of wages going up. We just put a man on the moon. This country was so optimistic that we actually had immigration offices around the world begging immigrants to come. That's how my dad got here. A friend of his took him to an immigration office in Calcutta where the staffer pitched him on the American dream, got him to apply for a visa, and then a few years later, he just got it. That's how easy it was. That's how easy we have to make it again. But to do that, we have to have it in conjunction with how are we actually developing our economy? How are we creating that kind of optimism again? It's not gonna be enough just to defeat Trump and then go back to what we had before, because part of why we are where we are is people are feeling like the pie is shrinking. We have to go back to a country where we are developing our nation intentionally.
Thank you. There has been a growing trend in the last few decades for politicians and government officials to gain vast personal wealth through stock trading while in office and lobbying after their time in service ends. There are no prohibitions on representatives owning shares in companies with business before committees on which they serve. Do you believe there should be laws against members of Congress trading on the stock market or investing in markets like Bitcoin? And what about lobbying? We'll start with Supervisor Chan.
Absolutely. I support the ban on stock trading for Congress members as well as their spouses and their children. It is important. We have done this in San Francisco to make sure that we know and have a transparency and a record keeping of who's lobbying our elected officials. There's a record of it. This is the reason why we all know that just last year, Waymo lobbied our SFO director 400 times. And this is a record that we all can actually check and know. And this is what we have to do. But I think it's not only that we have to make sure we can know who's lobbying our elected official or our Congress member. We also want to make sure that we can actually reform campaign finance law. We want to know how they're elected, who's electing them, and how the money is going into the super PAC. But we know that there's a record, but you have to search them. What in San Francisco, what we have done is when there is a political campaign ads, there will also be a listing to show who actually donated to these ads. We want to have that in Congress for all the members, so that people who elect them, the working people of throughout America, will actually know what their choices truly are, and that I believe fundamentally this is how we change Congress to actually deliver for the working people with transparency from the elected that we see.
Mr. Chakrabarty?
Yes, I absolutely support a ban on congressional stock trading for members of Congress. I've been campaigning on that since day one. And on top of that, we have to ban members of Congress from becoming lobbyists, because one of the ways corruption works in DC is lobbying industries will dangle jobs in front of members of Congress in exchange for them deregulating those industries. And members of Congress are very valuable for them because they come in with a lot of contacts. But another thing is, anybody who's ever been a member of Congress is allowed on the House floor. Staffers aren't allowed, members of Congress are. So you end up with lobbyists on the House floor lobbying people on bills because they were former members of Congress now working for the lobbying industry. So we absolutely have to ban that. Now, the thing is, both of these issues are actually surprisingly bipartisan. About 90% of Democrats and Republicans support a ban on congressional stock trading and a ban on members of Congress from becoming lobbyists. And yet, we don't see a bill ever get a floor vote on it. So what I will do in Congress is I will file what's known as a discharge petition. This is the same method that Ro Khanna and Tom Massey just used to force a release of the Epstein files. I'm gonna do that to force a vote on banning congressional stock trading. That's the kind of thing that leadership doesn't like because it's going around leadership, but I don't care because we absolutely have to ban this right now, and we can. Now, beyond that, I agree. We have to do major campaign finance reform, and that's another issue, actually, where most people agree. I believe we have to overturn Citizens United and move to a fully publicly financed election system, so no private money in elections at all. And the thing is, I think we can do that, because if you look at where people are at, most Democrats and Republicans think corruption in government is a number one or number two issue, up there with the economy. So what we have to do to make this happen is an actual movement of people and politicians who go into Congress who are willing to completely change what the status quo is there, break the corporate stranglehold of money, who get in there without having any corporate money in their campaigns. And that's why I'm not taking any corporate money in my campaign, and I'm supporting others around the country who are doing the same. Because there's a chance that if we get a movement like that in 2026, we can build the political capital to actually get this stuff done by 2028.
Senator Wiener.
Yeah, I mean, this is really about making sure people have confidence in government and confidence that elected officials are making decisions in the interest of the people and not in the interest of, for example, corporations. And so transparency and strong rules are critical. I strongly support a ban on congressional stock trading. It should have happened a long time ago. It's embarrassing on so many levels, and it is harmful, and it upends public confidence. When people joke about, people have said to me, oh, you're going to Congress, that means you're going to get rich. Like, the fact that people even have that idea, which is an earned idea, because so many members of Congress do get rich. So yes, we absolutely should ban it, and for crypto as well. And I have called, I also think that candidates should disclose their stock trades so people can get a glimpse into what candidates are doing. And so I've called for all candidates in this race to disclose the last 10 years worth of stock trades. I have none, a blank piece of paper, and I think we should all do that. The revolving door with lobbying also has to be addressed, and I don't think people should be able to do that. And in terms of campaign finance, which is the other thing that destroys confidence, Citizens United is a disaster. It is part of the rot in our democracy that needs to be excised. And if we can't amend the Constitution, then we regardless, need to expand the Supreme Court, which has become a political body. We need public financing. I agree with my opponent on that. Public financing is absolutely essential. We have it in San Francisco. We need it at all levels. And we also need to reduce or ban the ability of people to come into communities to try to purchase a seat in Congress by self-funding, by spending $5, $10, $15, $20 million of their own money trying to just flood a race and purchase a seat. We should also ban that as well, because that is also toxic.
Recently, several Congresspeople have been accused of sexually assaulting and harassing women. Other forms of misconduct, like inappropriate use of campaign funds, have also been reported. These accusations have led to resignations, but many of the abuses are reported to have been going on for years. Do you think that the House Ethics Committee acts in a timely manner, and is it effective at handling these allegations of misconduct? And are there ways to improve the response to stop these behaviors? Mr. Chakrabarty.
No, it has not acted in a timely manner, and it's not just on the House Ethics Committee. It's a problem of the culture in Washington, D.C., and in the establishment in general. We see too much of incumbents supporting other incumbents, and this is why people who've been in that system for so long, they're not willing to talk about issues that they've been seeing. I mean, it was shameful that after Eric Swalwell all those allegations came out against him, then we had a bunch of members in the House saying, oh yeah, we've been hearing rumors for years. So we have to have accountability not just on the people who have done the allegations, but on the people who are covering for them. Because it is unacceptable for anybody to be in public office and to use that office and that power to abuse people, to enrich themselves. This is the kind of thing that undermines confidence in our government so much that that's what lets somebody like Donald Trump get elected in the first place, to say that they're going to drain the swamp and whatever. Of course, he's been the worst on all these issues. But if we want to use government to do good things for people, which is ultimately what this vision is about, we want to use the government to do good things for people, we have to be able to trust the people in government. So we have to have way stronger ethics laws, not just on the people performing the acts that they should be held accountable for, but for people covering for them. We need to make sure that the House Ethics Committee is fully staffed and actively investigating, and we need to have, protections on whistleblowers in congressional offices as well, so that people can blow the whistle on their bosses and their colleagues when they see these abuses happening.
Senator Wiener.
We need zero tolerance for any form of sexual harassment, sexual violence, any form of violence or harassment by members of Congress, and it's been tolerated for a long time in some ways. And the Eric Swalwell situation with straight up sexual assaults and it's just a horrifying situation, and but I wish it were isolated to Eric Swalwell, because over the years we've seen a number of really horrific situations, and so there should be zero tolerance. And we need to support the survivors, because what we have also seen, and anyone who has paid attention or advocated or worked in this space knows that for survivors, coming forward, particularly when your abuser is powerful, is terrifying. And people are terrified of the consequences for them personally and professionally. And we need to create an atmosphere where they feel safe and comfortable and supported in coming forward to say what this person did to them. And that is an indictment of just the atmosphere in our political life, because it's not just Congress, but in politics, that people don't always feel safe and supported in being able to come forward. In the legislature, it was in my first few years, a number of members resign because of inappropriate behavior ranging up to sexual harassment and sexual assault. One of them we were going to expel, and then he resigned before we could expel him. And we went ahead and created a much more independent unit to investigate allegations. And we changed the law. The legislature had exempted itself from retaliation claims. We removed that exemption so that retaliation applies.
Thank you. Supervisor Chan.
I've been in San Francisco politics for more than 2 decades as a policy aide. I can tell you this, that this is the reason why, as a woman working in politics, I believe in union, I believe in labor, because this is where you actually can file a grievance and for protection when you have a union representation and be able to fight on your behalf and to be making sure that you have your rights. Absolutely, that is what we have to do. You can actually see, be it in Sacramento or being in Congress or in Capitol Hill right now, policy aides, these staffers are not unionized. They need to be unionized, and that is what we have to do and fight for. Second, it is absolutely the whistleblower program, but it is not enough to just have the program. In San Francisco, we do actually have an annual report, and in that annual report, it actually has specifically which department and what kind of complaints, including sexual harassment and of any kind, and then we know that duration of how long it actually resolved and what is the resolution of it. So we got to have a record, but it wouldn't be anything. It will be not meaningful if we actually don't have teeth. In San Francisco, if you are elected official, that not only that you can be disqualify or we can actually get rid of you at office, but we also can make sure that we take your pension away should you be found guilty of misconduct and criminal conduct. And that is what we have to do in Congress to make sure all these elected as well as city departments and powerful people in powerful position, that they know there will be teeth should you actually found guilty of criminal conduct or any type of misconduct. And that is how we're going to change that culture fundamentally to protect young staffer of any kind and making sure that it is a safe and healthy working environment for everyone.
What is your strategy for building legislative coalitions? How will you bridge the gap between different factions of the Democratic Party and align party priorities with voter interests? And will you also seek common ground with Republicans to advance legislation? Senator Wiener?
Yes, and building coalitions, including with Democrats who are not where you are, who are more maybe moderate and represent more moderate areas, and with Republicans is essential. When you are in a legislative body, you do not govern by fiat. You don't just say, I want this to happen, and so therefore it happens. You have to build coalitions both among members and among outside groups, advocates, folks who are working in the space. I have done that my entire time in office, and that is a skill to be able to build coalitions. And that is a skill that I have developed and I have been able to execute successfully. And so when you look at the work that I've done, every major housing law that I have passed, I have had support from Democratic Socialist members of the legislature and from MAGA Republican members of the legislature. On mental health, we've been able to always have bipartisan coalitions. Because when it comes to housing and mental health, those are not partisan issues. Those are issues that affect blue and red districts. And so finding those diverse coalitions is incredibly powerful. And so that's why, as a member, you have to get to know your colleagues and not just make assumptions. Oh, you're more conservative, therefore we must disagree on everything. Get to know people so that you can build those coalitions. And so the work we've done on housing, on mental health, on clean energy, we've always been able to get, or almost always able to get, bipartisan support. And if you come in and say, if you are not as progressive as I am, you're a bad person, I'm gonna recruit a primary challenger against you, I'm gonna just exile you, you're not gonna be able to do that. And you'll be able to take tough stances and you'll get exactly nothing done. You have to be able to work with people that you disagree with.
Supervisor Chan?
Absolutely. I know that firsthand as your budget committee chair. I've worked with diverse personalities, people with different political spectrum, yet every June 30th, we deliver to you, San Franciscans, a balanced budget because with the understanding that there's just going to be supervisor has different interests, they represent different groups, but we're going to come together in the best interest of San Francisco. And that is what I will do in Congress to make sure that we can do that within the Democratic Party. But I also understand that sometimes you got to whip the vote, and you're going to get the vote anywhere, everywhere you can get so that you deliver for the working people. And that is a principle and a commitment that I am making to San Franciscans. And I've been showing that and demonstrating that as your budget committee chair and as a member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. But look, at the end of the day, Trump administration is like no other administration. And this is what I will also say. And that I have learned that from my good mentor, Mayor Art Atnos, who has endorsed our campaign. He taught me this. Because when he was in the state legislature, there was actually not a supermajority of the Democrats. There were Republicans, there's Democrat, and he had to whip the vote. And I say, how do we make sure that we still be principled to our values, but also get things done? And he said, look, when you whip the vote, when it comes to civil rights issue, you go for the bloke. You have backbone and you stand up. So when it comes to LGBTQ rights, when it comes to immigrant rights, you stand up, you make sure you don't back down, and you call out the fascists. But when it's everything else to deliver for your constituents, you figure out how to deliver for them. You figure out the vote, and you figure out a compromise, and you get the deal done. And that will be the principle that I stand on and bring it with me from San Francisco to Washington, D.C.
Mr. Chakrabarty.
Yeah, I'm willing to work with anybody on an issue where we agree. I mean, when I was in Congress, I even worked with Matt Gaetz of all people on a resolution to try to end the U.S. war involved in the war in Yemen, which at the time was the worst human rights catastrophe that was going on in the country. But DC really does work differently. The power in DC is centralized in a speaker in a way that's not in Sacramento or in City Hall. And so what I saw in DC was a lot of members of Congress don't really talk to other members of Congress because you're kind of waiting to work your way up the ranks to eventually have some power. And I'll be honest, all three of us here are gonna go in as freshman members from a deep blue district. The way DC works, the Speaker of the House does not give floor votes to deep blue districts. They tend to prioritize people in purple districts or red districts who need to get reelected. So the normal route is if you just wanna go there and build up your career, it's gonna take a while for any of us to have any ability to do a whole lot for San Francisco. But there is a different route. So that's what I saw when I was in DC in 2018. So what we did with the Green New Deal at the time was challenge Democratic Party leadership. They didn't want to do anything on climate. They definitely didn't want to go bigger on climate change. And when AOC did that, people told her, you're blowing up your political career. But because she was willing to fight, she managed to get a source of power outside DC, and then we leveraged that on the inside. That's what got us 100 co-sponsors on the Green New Deal. That's what got us to move every presidential candidate to adopt their own ambitious climate plans. That's what got us millions of dollars back into a district. So you have to have this separate source of power that you're leveraging on the inside, both as a carrot and a stick. And that's gonna be my approach. I'm gonna pick popular issues where the people are on our side. I'm gonna build movements on the outside, capture national attention, use that as leverage on the inside, and that way as a freshman member of Congress, I'll have more power to do more for San Francisco than the normal career route.
The Trump administration recently fired all of the Presidio Trust board members and has called for the trust to be eliminated to the maximum extent consistent with applicable law, stating that it is a waste of funds and unnecessary. In addition, the municipal pier at Aquatic Park, which had been deteriorating for years, was closed in 2022 due to safety concerns. The National Park Service is responsible for maintaining the pier, but no federal funds have been allocated to repair it. How will you protect the Presidio and the people who live, recreate, and operate businesses there? Supervisor Chan.
I first want to just thank all the board of directors from Presidio Trust and just for their service. And it's been amazing to just watch how Presidio Trust, but also just Presidio itself has been a great legacy open space for San Franciscans. And certainly we absolutely have to fight for it. I also want to express my gratitude for Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, who has really done great work to ensure the sovereignty of Presidio Trust and making sure that it will be protected for generation to come. But it is similar to Kennedy Center that the Trump administration is taking away resources for it to try to dismantle it. And this is a moment where I continue to believe that not only San Franciscans, with the resources that we have and the coalition that we have, we will continue to be able to fight for ourselves in Washington, D.C. And we're going to continue to build on that legacy. We also know that National Park Service has always been a great partner to San Franciscans, and be it like the district that I represent, which is the Cliff House, or formerly known as Cliff House, in the area, Sutro Heights and Land's End. They've been really great partner, and Chrissy Field, we're grateful for them and for their support. And I think that they are also waiting for a moment. They too, I think that there's a lot of park rangers and public servants and the superintendent that we know and been working with for a long time. They too want the support from Congress to make sure that Congress actually has the backbone to provide the funding, to provide the protection, to provide the accountability to Trump administration so that they can do their job. And so this is what we're going to do in Congress. We're going to make sure that we exercise that power oversight. And I am cautiously optimistic and hopeful that this fall, in November, we will take back the House.
Mr. Chakrabarty.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier how I work with Matt Gaetz on an issue, right? One of the things I did in Congress is I would talk to my Republican colleagues. I mean, we disagreed on 99% of issues, but every now and then you could find something that you could work on. And I actually think with Trump, the first approach is I'm going to try to get him to back off. We saw Zoran do this in New York, where he just showed up and he talked to Trump and he got Trump to refuse to send ICE in the district. That will be one approach. But we also have to have the stick ready. And that is going to mean using the power of congressional oversight to put people from the administration in the hot seat, grill them, build a legal case so that they can't actually dismantle the Presidio. The Presidio is such a core part of San Francisco. My daughter went to preschool in the Presidio. I love this park. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure nothing happens to it. I believe their plans for the Presidio is to try to start developing it, to start building housing all over it. And unfortunately, there are some people in San Francisco, some donors who I think support that plan. So if push comes to shove, as a congressperson, I will organize with the city to make sure that we cut off any infrastructure, any water, any power to make it so it's impossible for them to develop the Presidio. Make it so uncomfortable for them that they back off. On an issue like this, where it matters so much to us, but doesn't matter all that much to them, I believe we can win. Because if we just fight and we make their lives uncomfortable, they will eventually back off. That's going to be my approach.
Senator Wiener.
So Trump is really the destroyer in chief. He, other than his gilded ballroom, he really doesn't build anything. I don't think he's capable of it. He tears down, whether it's the Kennedy Center or agencies or threatening to genocide Iran or whatever the case may be. He just destroys. That's what he knows how to do. So he says he wants to destroy the Presidio. He also wants to destroy Alcatraz. He keeps talking about that, one of the most popular park destinations in the country, because it gives him pain to know that other people are experiencing joy, like by visiting Alcatraz or the Presidio. The Presidio was created by an act of Congress. Even though Trump thinks he's the king and tries to act like the king, he's not, and so we will stop him. He got rid of the board. The Presidio can still function and execute contracts and do all the great things. This is such a success story, this decommissioned military base that is now a financially self-sufficient national park and a hub of innovation, and people live there and people visit. It's a truly amazing place. And again, I agree with with Supervisor Chan. Thank you, Speaker Merida Pelosi, for without her we would not have the Presidio. We would not have Chrissy Field. There are many things we would not have, and so I will absolutely fight hard to protect the Presidio. And again, this is just another example of reform we're going to need. Donald Trump has given us a list of every weakness in our democracy and every potential overreach by an unhinged president, and we need to strengthen our democracy, all of those weaknesses, and strengthen all the institutions that he is threatening or actually tearing down, and the Presidio is one of them.
Thank you. San Francisco's HIV response has long been driven by community-based organizations, and HIV programs are often among the first threatened during federal budget negotiations. How would you ensure federal policy supports grassroots and culturally competent HIV services rather than shifting resources solely to large healthcare systems? We'll start with Mr. Chakrabarty.
Yeah, so first off, we do have to make sure that the Ryan White Act and HOPWA grants are what we use to house our seniors with HIV/AIDS, are fully funded. They luckily did not get cut in the last budget negotiation, but they also did not get adjusted for the cost of living. And so they basically did get cut. But beyond that, to ensure that these funds are not just going to large healthcare providers, we need to use Ryan White Roundtable community input, the community input system that the Ryan White Act established for all the HIV/AIDS grants for things like HOPWA as well. Use that across the board to make sure that the community has input and so that the money is going where it needs to go. Now, the thing is on HIV and AIDS, it's not going to be enough just to fund the programs that we have today. Because we actually have an opportunity to go way bigger. Right now, back when I was in Congress in 2019, there was a movement to try to create generic PrEP. At that time, PrEP was it had a monopoly, Gilead had a monopoly on it, and they were charging exorbitant prices on it. And we used a congressional hearing to put pressure on Gilead's CEO, and that, along with the movement that was there at the time, eventually pressured Gilead to release generic PrEP years ahead of when their patents expired. Right now, with injectable PrEP, we have a drug that if you take it twice a year, it could completely eliminate HIV/AIDS. It has a near 100% efficacy rate, but it costs nearly $30,000 a year. So we have to do the same thing. We have to make sure that these drugs, these life-saving drugs, are not just existing for profits in the hands of a few CEOs. We have to create generic injectable PrEP, and then we actually have to manufacture that at the government level, create a generic manufacturer of pharmaceuticals, and that's something we absolutely can do through congressional pressure and oversight.
Supervisor Chan?
As your budget committee chair, we've been funding the additional cost of doing business for Ryan White, and we're very proud of that we're able to supplement the program. But what we also know that most recently the Trump administration has changed the funding formula. Instead of being able to provide funding for individuals that come to San Francisco and receiving that treatment, and that instead of that, they are actually now saying that they will only reimburse individuals who receive the treatments where they reside. And we got to reverse that funding formula so that we can make sure that because San Francisco has such a robust, cultural competent, different kinds of clinics and community centers that we can provide that care, we ought to ensure that San Francisco can continue that community model like city clinics. But it is not enough to make sure that we provide the existing HIV and AIDS treatments and care for those who need the care now. We also need to look to the future. It is why we got to reverse the cuts on National Health Institute to continue those research and studies on AIDS and HIV to ensure that future, that we have better and more advanced treatments and medication for the patients. But we also know that Medicaid is really where that for many individuals that they can, no matter where they live or where they receive their treatment, if they are Medicaid, that we can expand that coverage to make sure that we truly serve those who have HIV and AIDS, and no matter where they are, that is also the focus that we have to push forward, not only for Medicaid expansion and coverage, but Medicare for all ultimately is where we need to go when we make sure that we have cultural competent care for individuals.
Senator Wiener.
Thank you. This is super personal for me because I came of age as a closeted gay teen in 1987 when there was a mass die-off of people like me, others as well, but primarily gay men, and a federal government that didn't give a damn, that was just letting it happen, ignoring it, and frankly cheerleading for us to die faster. And so that when I came out in 1990 as a 20-year-old, I immediately started volunteering on an AIDS crisis hotline. And so I saw early on how culturally competent, community-based organizations can be the difference between life and death for many communities, but including for those living with HIV or at risk for HIV. And so I dedicated my life to sticking up for this community. And so when I went on to the Board of Supervisors, I was the champion every year to backfill the federal Ryan White care cuts, and we were able to do that every single year. In 2014, I became the first elected official in the country to publicly disclose that I was taking PrEP, which I still do, and I did that to reduce stigma and to raise awareness, because PrEP is essential for eliminating new HIV infections. And in the legislature, I work hand in glove with a statewide coalition of HIV/AIDS-focused community-based organizations to make sure that they have the support and the funding they need on the ground to be able to keep people healthy and to save lives. We need to restore all of the cuts for HIV/AIDS. We need to, the damage that they've done to USAID and PEPFAR as well is going to fuel new HIV infections and AIDS diagnoses around the world. The Medicaid cuts are going to fuel more people are going to have AIDS and die in this country because of these Medicaid cuts. If they are allowed to go into effect, we have to stop it. We know how to end this epidemic.
That was our last question. Candidates, it's now time to share your closing statements with District 11 voters. We will go in reverse alphabetical order by last name. You each have 2 minutes for your closing statements. Senator Wiener.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you for hosting this debate. For the last almost 29 years, I have woken up every morning asking myself, what am I going to do today to make San Franciscans' lives better? I did that as a young activist, helping to build our LGBT community center and standing up for our community when we were under assault. I did that as a member of the Board of Supervisors, sticking up for so many communities that were under assault, fighting for more housing, fighting to save Muni. I've done it in the state Senate as a leader on housing, on healthcare, on clean energy, on transit, standing up to some of the most powerful corporations on planet Earth, and not always winning, but often winning. And I do that work. I did that work as a community activist. I did it on the Board of Supervisors and in the Senate out of love for this city and out of a deep commitment to make people's lives better. Because that is the only reason to run for office or hold office, to be committed every day to work to make people's lives better, to make housing more affordable, to expand access to health care, to expand access to paid family leave and to child care. All of the things that people need to succeed. And if you're doing it for any reason other than that, you shouldn't be in elected office. I have committed my life to this community, and I have done so in a way that I've been able to deliver for this community on the huge policy wins that we've had, the laws that we passed, that everyone told us it's impossible to do that. That industry is too powerful, and we got it passed. And it would be such a deep honor to represent this community in Congress, to take that work to Congress, and once again to deliver for San Francisco and for this country, and I'd be honored to have your support.
Supervisor Chan.
I was born in Hong Kong and and went to grade school in Taiwan and came to San Francisco's Chinatown when I was 13 years old with my single mom and a younger brother. San Francisco, it's amazing as a sanctuary city, and it's only in San Francisco someone like me, first generation immigrant, a Chinese American woman speaking with an accent, be able to run for office and won twice, elected and re-elected in 2024, and have the opportunity now to run for Congress. It is also in San Francisco, someone like us, our campaign, that we do not take corporate PAC and we cannot write ourselves a $5 million check, that we are still funded and powered by the people, by the working people, by the teachers and nurses and firefighters and hotel workers and the Working Families Party. We are here to make sure that we deliver for the working people in San Francisco, and we bring that agenda all the way to Washington, D.C. Look, I think that this is a moment that we know that because of the coalition that we have built, on day one, we will reverse cuts to healthcare. We will push for Medicare for all. We will push for funding for affordable childcare, fully funded K-12 classroom, and free city college. We will affirm birthright citizenship. We will fight for naturalized citizenship. We will make sure that there is a meaningful pathway to citizenship. Together, we can do this, and we will be so grateful to have your support, and please join this People Power campaign, and we appreciate you.
Mr. Chakrabarty.
Thank you. So when I was working in Congress, I remember meeting this rep from Tennessee, and he had done amazing work in the State House. He had passed this lottery bill to fund free community college in Tennessee as a Democrat, much harder state than California. But what had he done in DC? Pretty much nothing. He had spent years selling his vote off to the highest bidder, years cozying up to leadership to maybe someday get a floor vote on one of his bills, years working his way up the committee ranks to be a chair someday. That's how the system works in DC. Now, I'm running not to climb the ladder of that broken system. I'm running to change it because right now, that's possible. We have a chance to actually pass Medicare for all, a chance to tax the ultra-rich, to build the affordable housing and expand public transit that San Franciscans truly need. But to do it, we need Democrats who won't take corporate money and who are willing to challenge Democratic Party leadership. Now, I might be the only one in this race willing to do that, but I'm not the only one in the nation. There are insurgent candidates running across the country, and they're winning. And together, we're gonna go to DC, change Democratic Party leadership, break the stranglehold of corporate money in our politics, and start building a society that truly works for all. But to do that, we're gonna need a movement unlike anything we've seen in generations, and I'm seeing that right now. We see it at the No Kings rallies, we see it at the anti-ICE protests, and we're seeing it in our campaign where thousands of volunteers have shown up. We've knocked hundreds of thousands of doors because people are demanding a Democratic Party that actually knows how to fight Trump and that has a true vision for how to build a society that really works for everybody. So this election, San Francisco really has the chance to lead this change. So I say, let's take it.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters of San Francisco, thank you to the candidates, the voters, UCSF, Jones Memorial United Methodist Church, ACLU NorCal, and SFGov TV for supporting this nonpartisan forum. To everyone here tonight, tuning in online or watching the recording, thank you so much for participating in our democracy by learning about your choices for the upcoming election. The League of Women Voters is hosting candidate forums for most local races, including the District 2 and District 4 supervisors and the California Superintendent of Public Education with Parents for Public Schools. The League is also posting candidate statements for all local races on YouTube. You can visit LWVSF.org to learn more and RSVP. Remember to cast your vote by Election Day, which is June 2nd. The League recommends using one of the 37 ballot drop boxes around the city rather than the US mail because the mail can be unreliable. Or vote in person early at City Hall or at your polling place on Election Day. Your vote matters. Help build the change you want to see in our community and nation. Encourage your friends, family, and neighbors to vote. Thank you so much and have a good night.